everybody, welcome to the first episode of Starwing Biographies. So this one that we have here is Helena the Persistent by Shyhobbyist on DeviantArt. So you should check him out, and this is not my own work, and just remember that this takes place in Jig's universe, but as we said, we don't affiliate with Jig. So forgive me if there's any background noise or if I stutter or I hesitate. And thank you, Raspberry Barrel, for giving me the inspiration. Okay, let's begin. Here stands Helena and her undying light. It never ceased to shine as she made Mewni bright. Helena the Persistent. Born 8:68 a.m., died 9:18 a.m. Was queen 8:84 a.m. to 9:18 a.m. Married to Richmond Cross. Children Nova Butterfly and Polo Butterfly. Princess Helena Butterfly was born on Dragonet 15 of 868 on a warm summer afternoon to Queen Aurora Butterfly and her king, Pine Forest. She had her father's green hair and eyes, her mother's tan skin, and carried turquoise 8-pointed stars on her cheeks. According to both her parents, her characteristic mole had been inherited from her maternal grandfather, Marco Diaz, the first daughter of the first hybrid queen. Helena's birth had caused several complications to Queen Aurora, leaving her in a very frail and sickly condition. As a result, fearing the princess would come ill as well, Helena was placed under the tight surveillance during her first weeks of life, mostly at the request of her father, King Pine. Helena had almost no memories of being an only child due to the birth of her sister, Celia, in the fall of the following year. Despite being barely 1 year old, Helena was said to be very receptive to the birth of her little sister, with no animosity being accorded between the two, in spite of the birth of the inborn sibling rivalry. Imagine that is nowadays painted. From an early age, the princess began to manifest an unprecedented connection to her magic, first noticed by her parents while attempting to put her to sleep. Soon reports from servants, maids, and nannies claiming that Helena's cheek emblems would light up whenever the princess was upset began to multiply, with some even bringing up cases of sleep floating or aura radiating. As rumors began to arise that her daughter's unheard of magic anomalies were an omen to looming bad times, Queen Aurora decided to settle her doubts and shut said rumors at once by having Helena examined by the Magic High Commission. It was revealed that Helena's own hybrid physiology could barely hold her magic essence within her, which is why it would often overflow in the widest of forms, mostly whenever the princess was under considerable emotional stress. This made Queen Aurora and King Pine be slightly overprotective of their daughter, while still giving her some space to grow and live a normal childhood. Helena was described as one of the warmest and most enthusiastic little girls in Mewni, approachable and light-hearted. She loved having fun and was always said to bring a ray of sunshine with her whenever she walked into a room. She had such an innocent, childlike wonder for the world and the ability to see the best in everyone and everything. It felt like a much-needed breath of fresh air for the court, with most of the castle staff taking a strong affection for the princess. However, what Helena's historically most well known for is her stubbornness and persistence, the owner of the resilient and unbreakable spirit. Once Helena made up her mind, it was almost impossible to change it. A curious account comes from one of Queen Aurora's personal records in 873. As Pine was trying to teach her to ride a unicorn, Helena got quite frustrated because her steed wouldn't let itself be climbed. Although I told her it was okay and we'd try the next day, Helena insisted she was going to do it and stayed behind the stables. After she missed dinner and wasn't in her room, we got worried and went looking for her, to find her sleeping with Sunchaser in its stall. The following day, Helena and Sunchaser were already happily galloping through the royal prairies. I have never seen such a determined and motivated kid. All this made Helena already differ drastically from Solia, with the youngest being unquestionably more collected and calculated and rational. While Helena had more affinity with her forest side of the family, Solia was, with no doubt, much more of a butterfly than the forest. Speaking of her forest relatives, Helena had taken a great liking and admiration to her Aunt Maple Forest. Whenever she could, she would accompany her father in his visit to the forest watchtower, just to see and spend time with Maple, who often took her along on hunts and taught her the basics of archery, in addition to some sword fighting and hand-to-hand combat, which made Aurora funnily worried. Some even say the princess's fondness for her aunt was such that would even go to style her hair in her likeness, wild and unkempt, though Helena always refused to admit it. While Helena's childhood didn't have many close friendships, it was worth mentioning two noteworthy exceptions: Princess Theresa, or Tessa Laurel, and Richmond Cross, her two best friends. The daughter of King Samuel and Queen Alison, Tessa and Helena had met during a playdate arranged by their parents. An effort of Queen Aurora to get her daughter to socialize with more children of her age. Regardless, the bond that ensued was almost immediate, as Helena finished the evening asking if Tessa could be her sister too. As for Richmond, historians have trouble pinpointing when the two actually met due to the lack of records, though it's assumed it was while Helena accompanied her mother to one of the Queen's frequent health checkups at Cross Sanatorium. The son of Lady Alice and Gareth, Helena had described Richmond as gentle, caring, and compassionate, with an adorable passion for riding and one of the only people who really got her. Once a month, the pair would meet and discuss their lives over a unicorn ride to the prairies. Some even say Helena's love for equestrian arts emerged to impress her friend, while others claim it was the main foundation of her friendship and what brought them together. Anyway, as she grew older, Helena slowly began maturing into the beginnings of the figure she's known as today. By the age of 8, Helena had already attended most of the council meetings and displayed eminent leadership abilities, in addition to acquiring a journal to begin recording her routines. As more confident and secure, she wasn't afraid to speak her mind and stand up for what she thought was right, often coming off as rebellious or defiant. However, she hadn't just matured in her way of acting, but also in her way of feeling. While she had always had some trouble controlling her emotions and the overflow of magic that constantly followed, she now rarely lost her composure and her tantrums subsided, and the princess managed to gain some control over her magic overflow. What began as random sporadic outbursts connected to the emotion had now mostly evolved in their majority to control temporary access to her innate magic abilities, even before receiving the wand. such as the ability to temporarily generate light from her cheeks and palms and levitate stuff to her, also known as the spell levitato. As Aurora came to me asking about training Helena, I pondered and gave Her Majesty the green light. And so, once a week, the princess began being personally instructed by the illustrator Sir Glossaric of Terms. Additionally, if Celia had once been jealous of her sister's figure, she now considered herself above her and vocally advocated her mother to replace her as heiress, declaring Helena far too unstable and unfit to rule Mewni one day. Even though Helena didn't seem all that affected by the experience, the truth is that day marked, in her own words, the first time she ever felt afraid of herself and what she could do to others. In her diary, she reports having recurring nightmares about losing control and hurting her loved ones, and doubting her worth as heiress. The princess suddenly became more cautious and obedient, in addition to enrolling in gardening, meditating, and yoga classes that would help her relax and unwind some stress while keeping her emotions in check. It was also her decision to halt her lessons with me, and at least until she received the wand like all her other ancestors. Weeks later, Helena's birthday and Lonely Star Ball took place. While initially excited to choose her first dance partner, she walked around the room and noticed every noble boy stepping back as she approached. Helena began to feel dismayed and returned to her seat. However, suddenly came in Richmond Ross, who had been late helping his sister at Cross Sanatorium. According to those who had been present in the room, as soon as the boy laid his eyes on the princess, he would not have hesitated and immediately advanced towards her, choosing Helena himself instead and taking her hand for the first dance. An unprecedented event for the centuries-old tradition. Many say that was the night they fell in love, and as they waltzed across the ballroom, it felt like the whole audience had suddenly disappeared, and all that was left was me and him. Helena later confided in Tessa. According to official records, the pair would have also reportedly left the day after their dance, but records of what they did have been lost to time. Finally, in 882, Helena turned 14, and as tradition dictates, was given the possession of the royal magic wand. At the feast, the princess would have made a speech to all those present, assuring everyone that she would do her best to protect the kingdom and her people, as it was her duty as royal princess. In the end, turning to her mother and assuring the queen she wouldn't let her down. Nevertheless, her 14th birthday also marked the day of her courtship with Richmond officially began, after he pulled her aside and offered her a golden locket, so she would never forget she had one too, he told her, recommencing her lessons with me. Helena was quite curious and eager to do magic with the wand for the first time. Most of her spells were aimed to test her limits in creativity, her signature being the supernova blaze ethereal beam, Helena's wand. Yet due to their rather uncontained and destructive nature, and Queen Aurora soon urging her daughter to proceed with care, the princess resolved to abstain herself from spell creation for a while and focus solely on her technique, providing herself to be an exemplary and applied student, whose persistence ended up being a strength. Why should I? The princess ended the lesson pensive, and myself happy for having done my job. Oh my god. Tragedy struck just a short week after her anniversary, as Helena woke up one morning with her wand nowhere to be found. Delaying the panic, she tried calling upon it several times to no avail, followed by asking me, her parents, and the castle staff, and even her own sister, earning her only a cold shrug as a response. If they had seen it anywhere. After turning her room around for the 17th time, Helena lost all hope and broke down crying on the floor, as a bubble of light formed around her. Hearing their daughter's cries and fearing another magical incident imminent, Queen Aurora and King Pine rushed to Helena's room, where the princess, between sobs, confessed she had lost the relic. Her mother immediately embraced her in her lap and comforted her, until Helena stopped her hand from caressing her head, stressing how she had failed her and wasn't worthy of being the royal princess or even her love, and that they should just replace her with Solia instead. It was then that Queen Aurora got Helena on her knees, assuring as she looked deep into her daughter's tearful eyes. There was nothing she could ever do that would make her stop loving her, and promising her that they would figure everything out together. Despite her mother's forgiveness and reassuring words, the disappearance of the wand had left a mark on Helena's once jovial optimism and positivity. With the princess becoming more serious and less prone to allowing herself to have fun or let down her guard, such change in her once light-hearted attitude led to some servants commenting that it was as if a part of her had gone missing along with the wand. Helena would only feel worse after hearing her sister comment to Sapphire Stone. She had one job and managed to fail even that. Luckily, she would find some comfort in Richmond and Tessa, who slowly helped her overcome her mistake and not be so harsh with herself. Then came the problem of how her magic training would proceed. Although I didn't see any issue with it, after a conversation with Queen Aurora, we decided that Helena would resume her wandless training. The lessons she had before receiving the wand now being very useful. Helena's wandless training would recommence the very next week at the prince's own request. While initially frustrated that I was purposely giving out the same basic lessons she had when she was younger, Helena confronted and accused me of stealing her evolution and not having enough trust in her like everyone else. However, I remained calm and told her she was not allowing herself to truly move past what happened and was holding on to it. Why should I? The princess ended the lesson pensive, and myself happy for having done my job. Effective. Oh my god. Helena returned the following day with a completely different mindset, now more open to criticism and accepting of her failures and mistakes. She began progressing with such readiness and ease by the end of the week. Her level had already been the same as a princess who had kept the wand from the beginning. After 2 months, she was able to perform any spell in the spell book with precision and efficiency. Her magical abilities grew more powerful and exceptional with each passing day, while still mostly being connected to her emotions and the state of her mind. As long as Helena believed in herself, she could do virtually anything with her magic. There are those who even believe that Helena was able to teach Tessa some magic. Tough said rumors remained unconfirmed. As her song day approached in 883, Helena revealed in correspondence to Tessa she hoped she would finally do her public image right and get her people to reaccept her. The event, however, was everything but perfect, as her bar came down with a mysterious case of yada yada berries poisoning. They had to replace by a last-minute songstress who offered to perform in their place. Everything was going as planned until the last verse. The songstress changed the tune and ended up publicly revealing Helena had lost the wand and Queen Aurora and King Pine had covered it up. The night ended in a riot as the royal family retired, with some of the audience even demanding Helena be replaced with Celia. Helena barely spoke to anyone or left her room the following weeks, allowing only the visits of Richmond and calls from Tessa. But then came the news that her mother's health had greatly aggravated, as it had in fact been since the disappearance of the wand, leaving Aurora on her deathbed. Helena spent her mother's final days by her bedside, and when Aurora's time came to an end in early 884, Her Majesty's last words reminded Helena to never doubt her values, and that she was certain she would be an even better queen than herself. The kingdom and Helena greatly grieved the loss of the Queen of Dawn. After the royal mourning period came to an end, and Helena prepared to be crowned, as she dined with Richmond and Tessa the night before her coronation, she was surprised by her sister Celia holding the royal magic wand. The night of the eclipsed sun are not all that well known, and have been fantasized and novelized so many times it's impossible to come up with a truly objective account. What most versions agree on, regardless, is that Helena would have lost her temper after Celia accused her of killing their mother with her idiotic persistency, as she went berserk on a rampage against her sister, awakening an incomplete butterfly form for the first time. Richmond would have attempted to stop Helena from killing Celia, but ended up being accidentally injured by one of Helena's attacks, leaving him unconscious and thus snapping Helena out of her unbridled rage. Convinced she had killed her beloved, Celia denounced Helena as being a monster and a murderer, and Helena, feeling truly broken and lost and not being able to carry the weight of such thought, fled the scene and the kingdom. The following months, Helena lived in isolation somewhere in the remote northern lands, the only place she was certain she would never hurt anyone again. She later put it, taking with her only sun chaser, her guilt and my rewarding company. She spends most of her days meditating in a monk-like behavior, until I encouraged her to seize the opportunity to strengthen the bond of her magic, and use her time to learn. Historians often debate whether the period of solitude would have truly lasted for the rest of her life, or if a return to Kingdom Butterfly was inevitable. Regardless, some even theorize a descent into madness could have been likely. What matters is that after 6 months of isolation, Helena had been found by the last person she would expect to meet, Richmond Cross. Helena and Richmond's re-encounter have often been over-romanticized by troubadours and minstrels, who claimed she would have fallen head over heels for her beau, immediately agreeing to return to the kingdom by his hand. However, what happened was far less idyllic. While initially overjoyed to see her suitor alive and asking Richmond how he found her, Helena was immediately met with the news that the kingdom had been in ruin ever since she had left. According to Richmond, in her absence, Celia had taken over the throne and crowned herself Celia the Righteous, ruling Mewni with an iron fist alongside her followers and imprisoning anyone who dared to oppose her word, including their father, Pine Forest, hell-bent on her motto, "We do what must be done." As her first royal act, Celia had openly been known a law that divided all monsters and humans from humans into their own sector, announced plans to destroy all the human artifacts left in the kingdom, made leaving the realm illegal under death penalty, and had issued horrific magic experiments on other human hybrids of all ages to find a cure for hybridism. As sorrow and despair once spread through the streets like a disease, a return to the Dark Ages had never been more likely. Helena was left heartbroken and shocked by such news. Yet when Richmond told her her people needed her, her expression quickly changed and Helena backed up and shrank by a tree, claiming she was no good for the kingdom or for anything else, and telling him to leave. It was then that Richmond revealed some stubbornness of his own, speaking to Helena as he had never done before. I won't delve too much into his speech to convince Helena to return, only that it ended with the phrase that would finally set Helena free of her own fear and doubt. You need to remember you are worth much more than what you give to others. You deserve love too. Be nicer to yourself, as you are to everyone else. That's why I fell in love with you, Richmond told her and kissed her cheek. Anyway, the young cross's encouraging words ended up being what Helena needed to truly open her eyes to the mistakes she made by leaving the kingdom and her sister's devilish hands. As a driven fire burned behind her eyes, Helena kissed Richmond and immediately mounted Sunchaser as she headed to the Kingdom Butterfly, more motivated than ever to stop Celia and take back the crown. Before crossing the butterfly border, Helena had stopped in the Laurel Kingdom before she reunited with Tessa, who offered her castle and resources as a means of planning a counter-strike. The following 2 weeks became known as the Great Conspiracy of 884, a series of secret meetings in which set everything in place to prepare the retaliation. She gathered an army of about 3,200 soldiers with reinforcements sent by Princess Mayday Spiderbite and Amelia Musty, sympathetic to her cause, and was met by ministers Rose Flowers and Dove Redbird, who refused to pledge their allegiance to Celia and provided crucial information about the inner workings of her sister's reign. Curious information. As she was preparing and strategizing with her soldiers, Helena came across some old information regarding the ancient human empire and the use of tattoos among magic users, deciding to tattoo her mother's 10-pointed sun on her right arm as an homage to her. In any case, Helena left for battle the dawn of the 14th day, where her sister awaited her at the castle with her forces. Remarkably making her way through Celia's army, Helena noted it had been quite a frail opposition, being consisted mostly of beings poorly made of some magic goo with little to no sentience, who could barely hold a sword, much less Celia's will. As she finally reached her sister, it's reported Helena would have tried to reason with Celia one last time, begging her to think of the best of the people and return the crown and the wand, but Celia would have simply scoffed at her, claiming Helena was far too afraid of herself to handle her own problems, much less those of a whole kingdom. Helena replied with her most well-known sentence, "You're right, I'm afraid, but I won't let that fear control me anymore." The two sisters then engaged in a unique combat, Helena in her half-butterfly form and Celia with the wand. As Richmond finally met their dispute, the battle took a turn for the worse. The following statement on the conclusion of the Battle of the Scorched Sun comes from Tessa, one of the only known existing reports. As Celia diverted her attention from Helena to Richmond, she pierced her blade through his navel, laughing as he fell on the floor, badly wounded. It was then that Helena stopped, stood very still, shouted, and rose in the air in her full butterfly form. She seemed to be in a complete control of her abilities for the first time. With a scary, silent focus, she bombarded Celia with beams of light. Then she drew a ring around her sister and set it on fire, covering it with a lucent dome, and kept charging at it until Celia finally fell on the floor unconscious, suffering from heat stroke and third-degree burns. Helena fell beside her, drained but still extending her arm, reaching for the wand, raising it, roaring victory as it metamorphosed and declared the battle won. Helena had been declared queen by the people. Still at the battlefield, however, she didn't celebrate, running instead toward Richmond's injured body, who showed very little signs of life. It was then that she demonstrated what her powers were truly capable of, as she knelt by his side, tears running down her cheeks, and whispered something into the wand. While nothing happened for the first few minutes, Richmond was suddenly engulfed in a golden aura in the shape of Helena's emblems, waking up seconds later with a scar on his torso. Fully recovered, the Mending Aura spell, as was later named, remained Helena's most brilliant creation, serving useful to at least one more of her descendants. But that's a story for later. Helena's crown. The fall of the scorched sun marked the end of Celia's short, ill-fated reign, as the ascension of Her Majesty Queen Helena the Persistent to the throne. However, the new Queen Helena decided to postpone her official coronation ceremony, as her mind was more preoccupied in fixing the more urgent problems that the kingdom faced. That being said, the post-conflict was a stressful time for Helena. Now the Queen, Helena was forced with a load of royal affairs Celia had failed to attend to, even asking King Father Pine for some help and guidance adjusting to the position. One of her first acts was the dismissal of the ministers that had sided with her sister in the first place, amongst them Goldstone and Spartan Fields, placing them with their children, and stripping them of their titles. As for Celia herself, while extremists had pressured Helena to end her sister's life at once, Helena felt unable to kill her own sister, opting instead to erase her memories, rehabilitate her, and wed her to King of the Grim, checking in with Celia over weekly letters to ensure she was fine and her memories weren't returning at all. In addition, Helena had also covered the capture and imprisonment of all those who had sided with Celia, but unfortunately some of them had been declared missing and unaccounted for, which would be the reason for many headaches in the years to come, but we're not quite there yet. The Queen then focused her attention on repairing the damage her sister had done, and bringing back on track to pay the overarching debt of the War of Worlds, prioritizing the people who had been affected by Celia's domain. The families of those who were experimenting on were financially compensated. In what became the first major public settlement in the kingdom's history, and while she wasn't able to bring all those who left came back, Helena made efforts to encourage their culture amongst the streets, valuing their technology and landmarks, while eventually paid off in a slight rise to the population by the end of 884. Additionally, the Queen also introduced the celebration of the Diversity Day, which would further accent the accessibility and hospitality to all species her reign became known for. Clogged with official duties, Helena still managed to find the time to proceed with her magical studies, now with the wand, even sacrificing hours of sleep to improve her technique even further. Some of the spells created during this era, such as the Multiplexo and the Priority Finder spell, served mainly to aid in her queenly affairs. Helena's coronation was finally held on her 17th birthday in 1885, bringing together monarchs from all over the continent who had been impressed with her leadership and resilience and wanted to personally congratulate her and get on her good side. Tessa later commented on the ceremony. Helena finally seemed whole and at peace with herself, her eyes shining with pride and joyfulness. It was also worth mentioning that such occasion also served for many young princes to formally present themselves as suitors to the young queen. Helena declined all the marriage proposals, claiming her heart already belonged to a thief who didn't intend on returning it. Regardless, her royal council soon began asking her about a marriage to Richmond and pressuring her to advance with the ceremony. The queen, however, had refused, saying, "We can't hurry love," and that for once in her life she didn't want to be rushed into an important decision. In any case, Helena and Richmond began spending more time together the following months, finally giving their relationship the attention it properly deserved, from private dinner parties to long walks in the garden under the moonlight, to secret picnics in the forest and attending every event together. Helena and Richmond experienced every aspect that a blossoming youthful courtship brings, including an amusing jealousy crisis from the queen whenever she saw Richmond with Lady Andromeda Firefly, often the object of her frustration with whatever she saw wrong with the court. Helena announced her engagement to Richmond Cross during the Lovers' Day of 887, with the ceremony officially taking place 1 year later in 888. There is a common misconception that Helena and Richmond would have begun trying for an heiress the wedding night itself. However, such rumors are fabricated and seem to originate from bored castlemates while the newlyweds were away for their honeymoon on Earth, stemming from King Richmond's widely known love for children. In truth, Helena's wish for motherhood only began to appear around the Independence Day festivities of 890, after she was waved goodbye by a child and felt completely melted by an adorable act. Nevertheless, as had been the case with her mother, Helena's hybridism made it difficult for her to conceive a child, with the queen becoming progressively more frustrated after all her attempts proved unfruitful. Sensing his wife's increasingly decaying mood and with each failed try, Richmond decided to halt Helena's persistency in an attempt for a while, justifying to his wife, "I once treated a young couple with the exact same problems. The woman only became with child after they relaxed and stopped intentionally trying for it. Biology is a funny thing, really. The more you want something, the less likely you are to get it. I say we stop being so focused and let it happen naturally. The joy we will feel will be even greater if we don't see it coming, my love." Taking her husband's advice, Helena focused more on her reign and projects. She had been hit by a slight crisis of personal solitude and fear of loneliness, which would reflect in her desire to tighten the bonds with the neighboring kingdoms. It reached its peak in 893 when Helena came forward with the plans to restore, renew, and build a new grid of modernized connecting roads around the whole continent. The Great Streak, the Butterfly Kingdom being at its core. The story actually began 5 years early on her wedding day of 888, after most of the monarchs were memorably late to the feast that followed the ceremony due to traffic at the Queen's Road. However, the preposition was made by occasion of the tournament of 893 and was an immediate success with the great majority of the kings and queens with a common trust fund being created amongst the kingdoms to cover the expenses of the project. Speaking of common and funds, it was also at this event that Queen Helena publicly announced the crown would cover and aid the kingdoms which were still recovering from the War of Worlds with the International Assistance Program. Helena was heavily criticized by her council, who called such an announcement reckless, inconsequent, and impulsive. Some even questioning the Queen's sanity and apparent disregard for the worsening of the kingdom's debt that would follow. However, Helena proved them wrong with the strict completion in 895. The following increase in the trade and commerce being enough to compensate for the expenses of the program and resulting in the great reduction of debt in its 50-year history. Plus, the Butterfly Kingdom gained a pristine reputation as a result of the compensation to help with Helena being regarded as a widely influential and powerful monarch across the continent. The inauguration party of the Great Streak coincided with that year's Harvest Moon Festival celebrations, which brought a lot of movement to the kingdom. Notably, Helena had excused herself from the event for feeling sick and retired early to her chambers. However, she later discovered and announced she was finally expecting an heiress. During the pregnancy, her royal duties were secured by King Richmond and King Father Pine, who didn't want her any harm and necessary stress to affect the gestation. And so, in 898, Helena gave birth to her daughter, Princess Nova, born with her father's pink hair and gray eyes, wearing pink galaxies on her cheeks. It wasn't all good news. Nonetheless, Nova's birth took a great toll and stress on Helena's body, leaving the queen bedridden for a whole fortnight. Then came the sudden news that her aunt Maple was killed by a rogue arrow during a bear hunt, followed by the death of Sunchaser, her loyal colt, and at the brink entering a depression. Helena had been saved by Richmond, Pine, and Tessa's constant company and cheering up, apart from the immense joy she couldn't stop feeling due to finally becoming a mother to a beautiful girl. Motherhood, as Helena put it, was the great challenge of her life. An extremely present and empathetic parent, Helena was often said to start crying whenever Nova would, leading to jokes between castle servants that they wouldn't know who shed the most tears, Helena, the queen or princess. An important event would happen on Nova's 4th birthday in 900 AM, when Helena and Richmond got together and offered their daughter her first Adma star. Seeing how much the princess loved stargazing at night. Against all odds, Helena announced her second pregnancy in 903, giving birth to the following year to a baby boy with Richmond's gray eyes and her green hair, named Polo. However, her age and physiology made Prince Polo's birth even more arduous and tiring than Nova's this time, leaving Helena unable to bear any more children, at risk of dying during childbirth. Already the mother of 2 lovable children, Helena accepted the medical advice and was given to her and was able to focus on raising her children. Helena's last spell with the wand occurred the night before Nova turned 14 and was given the relic in 910, the first monarch to directly enchant the wand since Queen Urania the first one. Helena cast a failsafe that would prevent any other Solia situation from happening in the future, in which it would only respond to the reigning queen, her chosen heiress, or someone of pure heart with good intentions. Still, regarding Nova's birthday, Helena would also send her daughter to Elfindor to study astronomy and astrophysics. The princess had demonstrated a clear interest and expertise in the matters over the years. In 915, King Pine died due to the flu in the winter. Helena was never the same after her father's death. She became sterner and more reserved, smiling only the rare occasion her daughter came to visit or when she was in Richmond or Polo's company. The last years of joy, Tessa often used to say. As the years passed, Helena could feel herself becoming weaker and weaker, losing the connection she once had to her magic. Nowadays, historians speculate, why didn't the queen choose to retire and pass the crown to Nova? While there are those who believe she didn't want to interrupt Nova's studies and wanted to finish her course first, there are also those who claim it was because she didn't want to show signs of weakness or feel like she was abandoning her people. Helena's insistence to keep at service would eventually cost her her life in 918, on a night she slept alone due to Richmond's absence at Cross Sanatorium, in occasion of the birth of her nephew. As Helena and the castle slept, a hooded figure made its way into the royal bedroom, taking a pillow and smothering the queen with it. Startled, Helena tried to fight back, but the moment her body gave up on her, and she didn't have any strength left, being suffocated to death and dying in a matter of minutes. Helena the Persistent was 50 years old and buried in the crypts under the Butterfly Castle, being finally reunited with her mother after decades. A fortnight of mourning was declared for the persistent queen whose insistence and resilience had saved the kingdom. Helena meeting her allies during the Great Conspiracy of 884. So much for staying all this time and listening to the biography of Helena the Persistent. And yeah, it was a very long one, but I think it was worth it. So this is Helena the Persistent by Shyhobbyist. I personally really loved her biography, and you should check out his work. Next will be Nova the Cosmic. Okay, bye guys. Make sure to like and subscribe.